All right, so a good setup consists of a couple main things, but the first thing is a lot of hip hinge, right? And this is like true hip hinge. This is where we actually bend at the hips, which allows our arms to dangle pretty naturally, which gives us a really consistent distance from the ball. So this prevents us from having to reach out or be way too close to the ball, as long as we have a little bit of hip hinge that allows us to have this really natural look here. So the first common mistake I often see is something called C posture, right? This is when you don't have that hip hinge. This is when you just stand pretty much straight up and then you just curve your upper back to get to the ball. Now, this causes a lot of issues, but the main one is a lack of rotation in the backswing, right? When you're very hunched up, all these muscles are tighter, they're kind of locked in here. You can't really get into a good spot without manipulating your arms a lot, which can lead to a lot of inconsistencies. So another common mistake I often see is something called S posture. And this is when you get into your setup and it's almost the reverse of C posture. This is when your lower back actually arches way out. You tighten up all of the muscles back here and then you're very rigid. And this causes a lot of issues too, but the main one is that causes a lot of stress on your lower back, especially in your downswing, right? Because if you sit here and you tense everything up back here and then you rotate hard into your backswing and then you rotate even harder into your downswing, all those muscles are already really tense. Golf is already not good for the low back in general, so we don't want to add any stress. That puts a lot of torque on your lower back and it can lead to a lot of injuries over time. So another common setup mistake I often see is our stance width, right? I've seen a lot of people get way too wide with their irons or way too narrow, right? Ideally, we have just about shoulder width for all of our irons. We don't want to get too wide just because we're hitting the 4-iron, because that can lead us to start swinging differently now that we have this wider stance. We still want to hit our irons like an iron. We don't want to hit them like a wood or a driver or even a wedge. So what we want to do is make sure we are always just about shoulder width apart, and then we're ready to go, right? A good little check you can do is simply just taking your club, hitting it to your shoulder and seeing, okay, does this line up with the instep of my foot? Yes. Does this line up with the instep of my other foot? Yes. I'm about shoulder width apart. I'm in a good spot. So now let's make a good swing. So I have a really simple drill that's going to help you get into a very good setup without really worrying about anything else. And I like to call it the club hip hinge drill. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this club, we're gonna rest it right below our belt buckle, and then we're gonna get our stance about shoulder width apart, assuming we're hitting an iron here. And then what we're gonna do is we're literally just going to stand straight, take this club below the belt and just push it back. And what this is going to do is it's going to force us into hip hinge. And we wanna do this until we feel a little bit of a stretch in our hamstrings maybe. Some people are gonna be more flexible than others, just enough to get you bent down towards the ball, right? Then what we wanna do from there is just break the knees. So now we're in this really athletic posture. And finally, we wanna just tuck the lower back in just a hair. And this is gonna help us not only to get out of that S posture and not cause any harm to our lower back, but it's actually going to help us engage our glutes and our core throughout the whole swing. And we might see a little bit more consistency from that. So once again, take the club below the belt, push back until you feel a little bit of a stretch, till you feel down and comfortable. Break the knees, and then just tuck in the lower back a hair. And now you can see this puts you in this very athletic posture, very comfortable posture, and then you can start making some good swings from there. Okay, so now I want to talk about driver. The driver setup is very similar. We can use that same hip hinge drill to get into our setup. We just need to make a few changes here. Number one is obviously the ball position. I'm sure you've seen from all sorts of golf influencers and coaches that you need to hit up on the driver. And that's absolutely true. We get that upward angle of attack, it's gonna launch our ball a little bit better. We're gonna have a little bit lower spin. We're gonna get a lot more distance and control on our drives. So that's really good. We definitely wanna do that. So to do that, we're gonna put the ball way forward in our stance, like up towards the left heel, right? Way forward. And then what we want to do as well is we want to widen our stance. Remember, for the irons, we said shoulder width. I usually like to think with the driver, just a foot, maybe half a foot outside of shoulder width. And I don't mean foot as a measurement. I mean like your actual foot. Like say this is shoulder width. I'm gonna see where my foot is lined up on this left side, and I'm just gonna take a step there. Or if I wanna do half a foot, I'll just step to where my toe was, right? And I do the same thing on the other side. Simple little step. Now we have this wider base. We have a little bit more control, a little bit more stability, and we're ready to hit this really powerful shot. Another thing we want to do with the driver is make sure we have a little bit of upper body tilt away from our target. So assuming I'm hitting a target out to my left here, if I get in my good setup, I'm here, I got my wider stance, my ball is up front. You can see I naturally have this little tilt to my body. And that's because I've gotten so used to it, right? But for those who don't, maybe they set up more like this. We really want to make sure that we kind of bump this left hip forward so we kind of almost preset impact, right? With this hip bump and then our upper body tilt, this helps us a lot to hit up on the ball through impact, right? We can still get our weight forward. We won't hang back and chunk it as much as it might seem like, but we have a lot better shot of actually hitting up on the ball and then launching that ball a lot better. And once we're in this stance, we can then do our hip hinge drill, right? So I'm gonna set up to this ball. I have my wider stance here. I'm ready to hit. And now I'm like, okay, I don't wanna have C posture. I don't wanna bend down towards the ball. I don't wanna overarch my lower back to get to the ball. So what I'm gonna do, take this club, below the belt, push straight back until I feel a little bit of a stretch. Just break the knees and then just tuck the lower back in a little bit. And now I'm ready to hit this driver. That's how you set up for the driver.